They aimed a sniper rifle at her head, laughing until a single shot turned silence into fear.
Bet you can't hit that
Camp
target.
parallax, fog thick as regret. Marines mocking her, stillness unaware, she heard everything. She'd once saved hostages with a 296-meter cold, shot classified, forgotten but never lost. They laughed when she drew her sidearm and 15 rounds became one perfect hole. "You'll never touch a man at a mile," he said. "You don't always get a mile," she replied. He aimed again, joking, but her instincts felt the glint intent hiding behind glass and ego. "You point that glass again," she warned, voice calm as stone, "and I'll treat it as engagement." The click wasn't dry, was a live round. She moved before thought, one shot shattering the rifle. "Intent isn't required to pull a trigger," she said, voice cold as steel, as MPs cuffed them all.
Move.
"Discipline isn't slow," she told the recruit. "It's everything. Watch, subscribe, and share below."
They aimed a sniper at her skull, laughed while they did it, calling it a drill, just dry tracking, just calibration. But when a Marine chambered a live round and the crosshairs locked on the back of her head, they found out what happens when you aim at a Navy SEAL and don't fire fast enough, because she didn't wait. She pivoted, drew, and with one shot, she destroyed the rifle before the trigger was ever pulled. Now, before we show you the exact moment that scope shattered, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, hit subscribe with that bell icon on, and stay locked in, because they aimed a sniper at her skull. And she proved Navy SEALs shoot back faster. The fog hadn't burned off yet. It clung to Camp Parallax like wet cotton, that narrow strip of coast where Navy and Marine Corps shared firing lanes the same way brothers share a bathroom. Reluctantly. Wind rolled in from the Pacific carrying salt and the smell of old brass. Gravel crunched under boots. Somewhere past the berm, rifle fire cracked in rhythm, sharp, controlled, echoing flat across concrete and clay. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson stood alone near Lane C, boots chalked white with dust, one hand resting on a clipboard, the other holding a wind flag she'd folded twice and hadn't bothered to unfold. She'd been up since 0430, hadn't said more than 3 words in the last hour, not out of silence, out of choice. She was watching. Down the ridge, 3 Marine Scout snipers were setting up on the elevated concrete perch. Sergeant Vic Torres, loud by rank and louder by habit. Corporal Hale, compact, wiry, the kind of guy who moved like he was always about to sprint. And Private Granger, young, all jawline, swagger thicker than his experience. Torres settled behind his scope and grinned at his grouping. "Center punch. That man's not getting back up." Granger leaned over. "Unless he's wearing 3 vests and says his prayers real fast." Hale chuckled. "Even then, long as we're not clearing rooms with kitchen knives like the SEALs." They all laughed. The sound bounced down the range like it didn't care who heard. Granger tilted his chin toward Lawson across the way. "What's she even doing out here? Thought this was precision work." Torres spat into the dirt beside his bipod. "Probably checking our handwriting." Lawson didn't look up. Her pencil scratched once across the paper. Wind shift. 3 knots. Temperature rise. 2 degrees. She'd been standing in the same spot for 15 minutes. But she'd heard every word. "Bet she hasn't been prone since Bush was president," Torres muttered. "These SEAL types get too used to close range. No patience for the long game." Granger smirked. "You saying she can't hit past 50? I'm saying real shooters keep their hands clean. We don't get dirty, just deadly." Hale whistled low. "Write that one down." More laughter, too loud this time. Lawson moved. Not toward them, just a quarter turn into the wind. She adjusted the scope on the bench beside her, tapped the lens once, calm, precise, deliberate. No words, no reaction. But something about the movement made Torres pause mid-laugh, the way her shoulders never tensed, the way her hands stayed loose. Granger noticed too. She always that quiet? Torres shrugged, probably waiting for us to screw up. Lawson clicked her pencil and turned back to the range, eyes shaded under the brim of her cap. Not waiting, just watching. The sun climbed slow, burned the fog off in strips until the ridge emerged full and sharp. What it left behind was glare, white and harsh off the metal rails. Perfect weather for false confidence. Major Reese walked the deck like a man who'd built it himself. Aviators perched high, clipboard tucked under one arm, voice loud enough to carry but not quite yelling. He stopped beside the sniper perch just as Torres locked in another tight group at 700 meters. "That's 3 in a row," Reese said, nodding. "Clean as Sunday." Torres lifted his cheek from the stock. "Not bad for pre-lunch." Reese grinned and patted his shoulder. "Not bad at all. Could teach half the cadre a thing or two about follow-through." Lawson heard it from 20 paces away. Didn't flinch, just tapped a new column on her chart. Reese turned her way. "How's the data looking, Commander?" "Wind's holding. Air temp rising. Mirage under threshold." He nodded without really listening and looked back at the snipers. "You hear that, boys? Even the SEALs say your conditions are golden." Granger snorted. "Nice to be agreed with." Reese didn't notice Lawson's jaw set just slightly. Not from insult. She'd heard worse from better, but from something else, the way proximity to respect gets mistaken for earning it. What nobody mentioned, what nobody knew, was why Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson had been reassigned to Camp Parallax in the first place. Not punishment, not injury, but because she'd once sat 5 stories above a Damascus courtyard behind a shattered balcony wall and made a 296-meter cold shot through a hostage-taker's left eye socket while wind screamed through a collapsed hotel. Then stayed in position for another 23 minutes, suppressing 5 rooftop angles until her team extracted 4 wounded and 2 dead without taking another bullet. That report was filed under SEAL Team 6 rotations, marked classified, logged under counter-sniper urban suppression. Only 4 people knew she was the one behind the scope. She'd never told a 5th. Her vision had gone soft 6 years later, retinal degradation, freak complication. She stepped down voluntarily, got surgery. Recovery took time. Time turned into doubt. Doubt turned into whispers. Now she was back. And now the only thing they saw was a woman in clean boots writing down wind speeds. "Hey," Torres called, lining up another round. "Want to bet the spotter glass doesn't catch this one?" Lawson didn't respond. She walked over to the far bench, adjusted the turret dial on the scope he was about to use, stepped away without a word. Torres fired. The shot rang clean, but kissed just off-center, half an inch right. Granger squinted through the scope. "Wind got tricky," Lawson said without looking back. "You aimed for the Mirage, not the correction." Torres looked up sharply. She was already walking away. By mid-morning, the range had settled into rhythm. Steel targets ringing, comms chatter light. Sun casting long shadows across gravel. Major Reese called for a hold and stepped up onto the central tower platform. Clipboard raised like a conductor about to cue brass. "All right, we've seen wind calls and slow play. Let's liven it up. Friendly demo, 1 from each side. Marines first." Hale smirked and elbowed Torres. "Show the commander what long range really looks like." Torres took the lead without hesitation, dropped prone, loaded fresh. 800? Reese nodded. "You pick." Torres chambered with a satisfying click and settled his cheek. Boots anchored, fingers relaxed. Scope centered on the steel silhouette crouched in scrub at the far edge of Lane D. Crosswinds licked sideways, but Torres adjusted clean. 3 shots in 8 seconds. 3 gongs in sequence, clean, fast, cocky. He sat up like he was stepping out of a convertible. That's the difference between hunters and house clearers. The Marines laughed. Even Reese chuckled, arms folded. "You're up, Commander." Lawson didn't say a word. She walked quietly toward Lane A, opposite direction from the rifle ridge. No rifle, no optic, just her sidearm. The silence was immediate. Granger muttered, "What's she gonna shoot? A snake?" Hale elbowed him. Nah, maybe a soda can from 10 feet. Lawson stopped at the 50-meter mark. No fanfare, no speech. She unholstered her SIG M18, checked the chamber, loaded a standard 15-round mag. Range safety officer nodded from the corner. Without a sound, she raised the pistol, both hands, settled into stance, and fired. One shot, then another, then 12 more. No huff, no flare, just rhythm. Controlled, surgical. She paused, took 3 steps sideways, fired the last round from a hard angle, holstered, walked back. Granger scoffed. Was that supposed to be impressive? Reese squinted toward the silhouette. Looks like you might have pulled high on the last... Then the spotter next to the target called out. Sir? He raised a scope, adjusted, paused. There's only one hole. Reese frowned. What? All 15. Same entry point. Even the snipers stopped moving. The spotter adjusted focus. Dead center, no splatter variance. Looks like a clover leaf, but there's no second tear. She drove all 15 through the same spot. Granger blinked. You mean like, same hole? The spotter confirmed. The Marines looked at each other, half in disbelief, half in a dawning silence none of them liked. From the far lane, a voice cut through. I've seen that before. Everyone turned. Gunnery Sergeant Rains, 28 years in, Fallujah, Ramadi. The kind of Marine who'd earned the right to stay quiet. He stood near lane 6, arms crossed, watching Lawson with the same expression you give a piece of machinery you thought was broken until it suddenly worked better than new. Damascus, 2019, counter sniper op. He didn't elaborate, didn't need to, just gave Lawson one slow nod. Not respect, recognition. Then he turned back to his own lane. Torres cleared his throat. That's cute, Commander, but you'll never touch a man at a mile with that thing. Lawson turned her head slightly. You don't always get a mile. Then she walked back to her table, sat down, picked up her clipboard like she hadn't just silenced a shooting line. By noon, the sun had full control, bleaching the concrete pale, baking the rifle rails until metal shimmered with heat. Most of the shooters tucked themselves under the overhead tarp, sipping burnt coffee, squinting through the sunglasses. Lawson sat alone near the armory locker, back straight, hands clean, not a trace of sweat on her brow. She sipped from a canteen, writing something in the corner of her notebook no one could see. Torres strolled over, coffee in hand, chewing gum like it gave him rank. You know, he said loud enough for everyone to hear, I've seen plenty of guys throw bullseyes at 50, but I've never seen someone waste 15 rounds making a hole the size of a nail head. Granger grinned. Some people get trigger happy when the targets don't shoot back. Lawson didn't look up. Major Reese joined just then, chuckling. Come on, boys. She grouped tighter than I've ever seen. Let her have the point. But Torres wasn't done. He leaned forward, voice lowering. You ever trained reflex under threat, Commander? Lawson glanced up, mildly. Define threat, Torres smiled thin. Simulated engagement, like real-world close clearance. One of us tracks a silhouette. You represent hostile movement, dry scopes only. We practice target reaction time. See how fast the glass can follow live movement. Granger perked up. Like a live chess piece. Reese shook his head. You're not putting real optics on another shooter. No rounds, Torres said quickly. All safeties engaged. No bolts, just tracking posture. Reese hesitated. That's skirting protocol. It's not contact, Torres argued. No discharge, just speed drill. We've done worse with mannequins. Then he looked directly at Lawson. Unless you're uncomfortable being in front of the barrel. She set her canteen down, met his eyes without a flicker. Never been uncomfortable around amateurs. That drew a few half laughs. Even Reese cracked a grin. Granger jumped in. So, we got a drill or not? Reese shrugged. Keep it clean. No bolts, no rounds. Confirm safeties twice. If I catch even a chamber shadow, it's over. Lawson stood. Protocol says no muzzle rises above the waist. No tracking past 90 degrees. If one of you lifts past collarbone height, drill ends. Torres raised a hand mockingly. Scout's honor! But as she stepped out into the clearing, the air shifted. She caught it, the glint in his eye. Not malice, just ego. The kind that thinks rules are furniture. Move them when convenient. Sit on them when bored. Lawson adjusted her cap, then said quiet but sharp, "Never point a weapon at something you don't intend to destroy." Torres smiled again. "Unless it's just for training." The words didn't fall like a joke. They landed like a match. By afternoon, the ridge had gone bone dry. Quiet. Haze rolled in soft from the shoreline, diffusing the sun into low amber glare. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the deck. Crosswind drifted in from the north, nothing sharp, just enough to mess with confidence. Flags fluttered at inconsistent angles. Mirage shimmered along the lanes like water. Lieutenant Commander Lawson stood behind the observation post, reviewing shot telemetry from the last hour. The logbook beside her elbow, half filled with handwriting no one else could read, shorthand notations, body posture, target transition times, wind hold estimates. Across the range, Torres, Hale, and Granger moved with rehearsed ease. They'd changed out their live bolts, slung their rifles loosely, pretending to prep for a dry scope drill, tracking movement only, no chambered rounds, no triggers engaged. Major Reese wandered off toward the comms hut to chase down a glitch in the target reset system, left with a lazy wave, a promise to be back before anyone started flexing. Lawson stayed where she was. The wind shifted, she marked it. 3.6 knots, left to right, mirage thicker now, visibility still good. But there was that sharpness in the light that told trained eyes something was off. On the ridge, the Marines were talking. Quieter this time. "You really gonna track her?" Granger asked, grin suppressed. Hale knelt behind the tripod. "Just posture." Torres was prone again, scope capped, then uncapped. Crosshairs shimmered across the lens. He exhaled. "Bet I could center that braid at 700. "Safety's on," Hale reminded. "Relax," Torres said. "It's just dry work. Target never moves." They all laughed softly. Down on the range floor, Lawson crouched to collect 3 spent casings near the left side barricade. Standard duty brass. She dropped them into a small pouch at her hip, stood, dusted her palms off. That's when she paused. Not for a sound, for a feeling. There's a specific glint. Impossible to explain to someone who's never been watched through a scope. A gleam that doesn't belong in the chaos of wind and shimmer. It has intent. She turned slowly, scanned the top of the ridge without urgency. On most days, the optics would be hidden behind covers, angles too subtle, glass too filtered, but someone forgot the angle of the sun had changed, or maybe they never knew to begin with. From lane F, 80 meters up the ridge, one optic flared clean, light bouncing off glass just long enough to flash through the haze. Lawson's jaw didn't tighten. Her hand didn't move, but her spine aligned. Stillness dropped into her body like ballast. She counted 3 shapes on the ridge, prone positions, one scope slightly elevated, tracking arc consistent with her movement pattern. She'd walked 12 paces in the last 90 seconds. The glass had followed all 12. That wasn't calibration. That was lock. Her peripheral caught something else. Torres's elbow, too far forward. Weight distribution wrong for a resting position, right for an active one. She didn't need to know who it was. She just knew what it meant. And as her foot stepped back into square stance and her eyes narrowed slightly, someone on the ridge muttered something through a smile and put a scope on the back of her skull. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson didn't turn fast. She pivoted slow, measured. Like the air around her had thickened, her head swept left, then right, eyes calm but fixed. Scanning the ridgeline above the lanes, she knew what she was looking for. Not movement, not sound, not the glint again, just imbalance. And there it was, subtle, but enough. One rifle still mounted, not fully rested, barrel just off-center, not quite anchored flat like the others. A tripod tilted forward slightly, leg bracing deeper in the dirt. It wasn't threatening, not yet, but it wasn't nothing either. She raised her voice, level, unshaken. "You point that glass at me one more time, and I'll consider it an engagement." The range froze. Hale's head popped up first. "We're just calibrating," Granger called down. "Relax, Commander. It's just optics." She didn't respond. Not right away. Her eyes stayed on the line. because that's what experience teaches you. Where people speak from and where their bodies speak from are rarely the same place, and right now Torres's words said joke, but his posture said something else. The wind shifted again, more erratic now, left shoulder to right ankle. Lawson slowly stepped to the side, adjusting her angle, the way someone does when they feel a photograph being taken behind their back. She glanced down the range, saw the layout, distances, backstops, angles. Her hand moved, gently, to rest on the butt of her holstered sidearm, not drawing, just resting. She keyed her shoulder mic. Range Alpha, this is Lawson on line C. Confirm all stations cold. Requesting full safety check. Potential protocol deviation. The response was static, then nothing. Reese hadn't made it back yet. She tried again. Range Alpha, confirm you read. Still nothing but wind. She looked back up. Still no muzzle rise, still no draw, but Torres was in the glass again, not aiming, not overtly, but adjusting, watching her move. You tracking me? She asked. Voice cutting through the space between them. No reply, just Hale muttering something she couldn't hear, then a click, not the laughable kind. Not a range joke, a real one. Subtle, short, deliberate. She heard it with her chest more than her ears. Bolt forward. Her fingers flexed once on the grip of her cig. The reticle was still on her. She knew it. Not imagined. Not guessed. Felt. And the shift in Torres's shoulder confirmed everything. That slight lean in. A muscle memory twitch from a man about to squeeze. Not hard, not violent. Just thoughtless. Her voice came low. Even. Final. You're done. But Torres didn't move. And Rhea Lawson had already seen enough men hesitate in that exact position. She didn't wait for the shot. Because in her world, you don't wait for permission to survive. The sound came like a tooth snapping in a clenched jaw. A bolt slamming into battery, not a dry click, not a drill. It was the exact unmistakable metallic report of a live round chambering into a long rifle, and it came from Torres's position. Lawson moved before the echo even hit the firing line. Her right hand snapped to her holster, muscle memory bypassing decision. SIG M18 clearing leather before her boots had finished pivoting. Her stance dropped an inch, center of gravity shifting, arms aligning on instinct and training older than thought. The pistol barked once, short, crisp, final. A puff of gray dust exploded off the ridge just left of Torres's rifle. The Marines flinched like they'd been hit, but nothing struck flesh, because the bullet hadn't aimed for a man. It had aimed for the weapon. The optic on Torres's rifle shattered, scattering lens fragments across the top of the perch. The barrel assembly jolted sideways, impact chewing into the upper housing. The bolt jammed halfway shut. Metal twisted from sudden torsion. The rifle was done, crippled, out of commission in one shot. Torres dropped it like it burned. His hands shot into the air as he stumbled back, fingers bleeding from shrapnel slivers. Hale stood frozen. Granger blinked like he was waking from a dream. Lawson didn't lower her weapon, didn't step back. She held the stance, arms steady, chest square, sidearm trained, not at them, but over them, at the now smoking ridgeline. Weapons down, now! No one argued. All three Marines raised their palms slowly, knees locked like prisoners at parade rest. The range had gone dead silent. No crackle of radios, no wind. Just the smell of scorched carbon and fear. Lawson, finally holstered, walked up the incline, calm, unhurried, her boots crunching on gravel with a rhythm that made Torres flinch harder than the gunshot had. When she reached the rifle, she didn't touch it. She just looked. The optic housing was split at the seam. The barrel's heat shield dented. Her shot had passed clean through the upper rail, severing zero capacity for function. She glanced down at the gravel where the spent shell casing from her own sidearm lay gleaming under a haze. Then she looked at Torres. He still hadn't spoken. His face was gray-white. A line of blood traced his cheekbone where a shard of scope glass had nicked the skin. Lawson said only one word. "Why?" Torres opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Behind them, fast-approaching boots slapped the deck. Major Reese returning at a jog, confusion already on his face as he scanned the ridge, then saw the weapon, the raised hands, Lawson standing between them all, steady as if she'd never drawn a breath. "What the hell?" Reese started. Lawson didn't even turn her head. "Range violation. Live bolt chambered. Disabling shot fired." Reese stopped in his tracks. "You shot the rifle?" Lawson finally turned to face him. "I disabled an imminent threat, with 0 injury." Reese looked at Torres. The broken rifle, the heat still rising off the barrel. "Was it loaded?" No one answered, but Lawson didn't need it. Her voice cut sharper now. "Run his chamber. You'll find a round that shouldn't be there." One of the MPs moved to inspect the weapon, lifted it carefully, checked the action. His eyes widened slightly. "Live round. Jammed in battery. Firing pin struck, but didn't fully release." Reese's face went pale. "Meaning?" The MP looked at Lawson, then back at Reese. "Meaning if she'd been a tenth of a second slower, this would have been a different kind of scene," Granger whispered, barely audible. "He didn't mean to." "Intent," Lawson said, "isn't required to pull a trigger." Reese just stared, because there was no blood, no raised voices, no injury. And yet, 3 Marines stood disarmed. 1 weapon lay ruined, and the only thing left standing unshaken in the middle of the chaos was a SEAL who'd fired once and didn't miss. Major Reese's jaw flexed as he stepped between the shooters, eyes bouncing from the scorched rifle to Torres's trembling hands. "Someone explain this, now!" Torres spoke first, but it came out brittle. It wasn't supposed to load. I didn't chamber anything. It was dry tracking, just scope work." Lawson didn't raise her voice. She reached into her side cargo pocket and held up a misshapen piece of brass, still warm. "I retrieved this from the gravel beside my right boot. 7.62 NATO. Lev fired." Reese took it slowly, inspecting the casing like it might vanish under his fingers. "Could have been left over from earlier." "No," Lawson said. "No black soot, no corrosion. Fresh discharge. Fired within the last 90 seconds. Reese looked at Torres. "Did you check your bolt before laying prone?" I thought I had," Lawson cut in. "He didn't, and he toggled the safety off before posture." "I watched his knuckles shift." Torres's voice cracked. "It was a reflex, not intentional. I didn't mean to." "1 more ounce of pressure," Lawson said, flat, precise, "and you'd be writing a condolence report." The words hit harder than if she'd shouted, because they were clinical, like diagnosis. No emotion, just truth. Reese exhaled sharply, turned to his comms mic. "Alpha Command, this is Reese. Range F lockdown. Send base MPs to Ridge 3. Immediate. Copy? Copy, came the reply, tinny and quick. ETA 2 minutes. Protocol 4 engaged. Torres sat down hard on the sandbags. Granger stood still, face pale. Hale turned away, rubbing the back of his neck like trying to wake himself up from something. Nobody moved toward Lawson, not even Reese. She stepped aside to let procedure pass through. The MPs arrived with the clipped boots and clear eyes. No guns raised, just a full awareness that something serious had broken through the calm. Reese gave the summary. 1 round fired, 1 weapon destroyed, no injuries, suspected safety violation. All trainees to be taken in for temporary detainment pending internal inquiry. Torres was cuffed without resistance. Granger didn't speak. Hale asked one question quietly. "Are we being charged?" Got no answer yet. Lawson handed over her notes without hesitation. Her sidearm remained holstered. She didn't posture, didn't offer justification, just facts. Reese approached her once the Marines were escorted off the ridge. "You could have hit him." "I didn't." He shook his head slowly. "That was a 20-meter shot, moving target, off angle, through a steel upper. I aimed for what I needed to stop." He stared at her. "You don't even sound mad." "I'm not," she said. "I'm still breathing. So are they. That's what matters." He didn't respond, and as base security swept the area, bagged the rifle, and logged the shattered scope under deliberate neutralization, Rhea Lawson stood alone at the edge of the firing lane, hands steady, face unreadable, mission complete. The sun had dipped low by the time the range reopened. Evening air curled cold over Camp Parallax, dragging mist back in from the coast like a curtain closing slow over the day. Lane lights flickered on, dim and amber, casting long shadows over the steel targets that had been reset and restapled. The air smelled like brass and sea salt. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson stood alone beside Lane 3. No rifle, just a roll of fresh paper silhouettes tucked under one arm. And a wrench in her hand as she recentered the far left steel plate that leaned a degree off square. She tightened the bolts without speaking, didn't look up when footsteps approached. A younger SEAL candidate, fresh-faced, maybe 22, stepped cautiously into the glow of the lane light. His boots scuffed slightly, shoulders squared but not stiff. He held a standard M4 training rifle at low ready. "Ma'am?" Lawson didn't answer right away. She stepped back from the target, gave it a half nod, then, "At ease." He relaxed a little, swallowed. His voice was careful. I heard about the incident with the team earlier?" She said nothing. He fidgeted once, then added, "If it's not out of line, how did you shoot the rifle without hitting him?" Lawson finally looked at him, steady, then glanced toward the broken ridgeline up the hill, now taped off. "Aim small, decide smaller." The recruit blinked. "Meaning?" "Means your shot isn't the decision. The decision came 5 steps before it." He nodded like he understood, but didn't, after a pause. "So, you weren't angry?" She shook her head once. "Anger's slow." He looked confused. She clarified, voice calm and final. "Discipline isn't." He stood there quietly for a moment, then raised his rifle slightly. "Requesting permission to train under you, ma'am?" She studied him for half a beat. No evaluation, just measure. Then she handed him a pair of ear pro from the bench. "Start with 20-meter control pairs. Clean resets. Call your misses out loud." He caught the muffs awkwardly and moved toward the line. Behind her, wind stirred the overhead flags. Somewhere out on the ocean, a ship's horn echoed once in the distance. Long, low, far enough away that it didn't matter. Lawson turned back to her own bench, picked up her pen, closed the small blue logbook beside her kit. No heroics, no ceremony, just one more range. Reset, ready. Would you have pulled the trigger or trusted your reflex? Do you think calm under fire is learned or born? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you, hit that like button, subscribe with the bell icon turned on, and share it with someone who still thinks speed beats control. And since our next mission's already queued up on your screen, go watch it now. I'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place.